I've been driving for rideshare services for a few years now. I usually stick to the late night shifts. The roads are quieter, the tips are better, and honestly, I just prefer the solitude. But every once in a while, I get a story that sticks with me, and not in a good way. This happened a few months ago, and to this day, I still get chills thinking about it. That night was the reason I finally installed a dash cam. It was around 2 a.m., and the streets were nearly deserted. Perfect for an easy shift. My car, a beat-up 2005 Volvo, rattled softly as I drove, but it had never let me down. Then, I got a ride request from a convenience store nearby. Nothing unusual, right? But the moment I accepted it, I got this feeling. You ever get that gut instinct that something's just off but you can't explain why? That's exactly what hit me as I pulled up. The store was closed. Not just closed, completely dark. No customers, no employees, no cars in the parking lot. Just silence. And then, I saw him. He was pacing outside the store, wearing a filthy, oversized hoodie with holes in the sleeves. His movements were twitchy, like he couldn't stand still. And every few seconds, he'd glance over his shoulder, like he was expecting someone or something to be there. If I had to guess, I'd say he was on something. I hesitated. My finger hovered over the cancel ride button. I should have just driven away, but I didn't. For reasons I still can't explain, I unlocked the doors. He slid into the back seat without a word. The moment I took my foot off the brake, I regretted it. Most passengers either scroll through their phones or stare out the window. Not him. He just sat there, staring. Not at the road, not at his phone, at me. His eyes locked onto mine through the rearview mirror, unblinking. His face was expressionless, but there was something about his stare, something wrong. I tried to ignore him, turning on the radio to break the silence. Big mistake. The moment the music started playing, he snapped. His voice was deep, rough, like someone who'd been smoking for years. Turn it off. Not please turn it off. Not, can you lower the volume? Just a cold, dead command. I hesitated for a second, then reached over and switched it off. My hands gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. Silence. Then, after a long, uncomfortable pause, he spoke again. You ever pick up someone you shouldn't have? The way he said it, it wasn't small talk. It wasn't curiosity. It was something else. I forced a chuckle, trying to keep things light. Well, I hope not. He didn't laugh. He didn't even react. Instead, he leaned back in his seat and muttered something under his breath. I couldn't make out the words. Then he started talking about how he used to be a rideshare driver himself. How he quit because, according to him, some punk stole from his car. His words were slurred, his tone erratic. And the whole time, he was smiling. It wasn't the kind of smile you'd expect from someone recalling an unpleasant memory. This was different. Darker. And then he said something that made my blood run cold. It's funny how much trust you put in someone sitting right behind you. I felt my pulse spike. My mind started racing. That was it. That was the moment I stopped seeing him as just a crazy drug addict. That was the moment I realized I was in real danger. I kept my eyes locked on the road, pretending not to be affected. But inside, I was panicking. I glanced at the GPS. Only a few more minutes until his stop. Just get there. But he wouldn't stop talking. His words became more frantic, more disturbing. He started apologizing over and over again. I didn't mean it. I'm a bad person. I didn't mean it. Who was he talking to? What was he apologizing for? Then, out of nowhere, he snapped. You missed the turn. I hadn't. The GPS clearly showed we were on track, but the sheer aggression in his voice made me react without thinking. I slammed on the brakes. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing. Then, headlights flooded the car. A police cruiser. It slowed as it passed, its spotlight briefly sweeping over my vehicle. And that's when the man in my back seat changed. He slouched down, almost disappearing into the seat. He didn't say a word. He just laid there, perfectly still, eyes closed, like he was trying to become invisible. I didn't dare move. I didn't dare speak. The police car kept driving. The moment it was gone, the man sat up. He leaned forward, close enough that I could feel his breath on my neck. "You got lucky." And just like that, he opened the door and disappeared into the night. I sat there, frozen, hands locked onto the steering wheel. Eventually, I pulled myself together and ended my shift early. I didn't sleep that night. A few weeks later, I came across a news article that made my stomach drop. A convenience store just 2 blocks from where I had picked that man up had been robbed that very same night. The suspect, still at large. It makes me sick knowing how close I was to real danger. Knowing that, if things had played out just a little differently, I might not have been so lucky. Since that night, I've been more careful about who I let into my car, because sometimes a ride isn't just a ride. Sometimes it's a one-way trip to something much worse. My name is Ryan, and my girlfriend Emily and I have been together for 3 years. We met as freshmen at Stanford University, which had been my dream school since childhood. Neither of us is originally from California, we're both from Ohio. Emily is from Cincinnati, and I grew up just outside Columbus. Because of this shared hometown connection, we naturally gravitated toward each other. Stanford isn't a huge school, but the majority of students come from California, making us Midwesterners stand out. One of our favorite traditions as a couple has been how we split Christmas between our families. Emily is adored by my relatives, so spending Christmas Eve at my place has become a ritual. Then, at midnight, we embark on a quiet, late-night drive to her house to celebrate Christmas Day with her family. Oddly enough, this 2-hour road trip through deserted back roads has become my favorite part of the holiday. No traffic, just the two of us, singing along to our favorite artist, Juice WRLD. The world feels asleep, and for those 2 hours, it's just us and the open road. But this past Christmas Eve, something changed, something terrifying. The night started like any other. We enjoyed dinner with my family, exchanged gifts, then packed up the car around midnight. The roads were empty, the snowfall light, and the car was warm and cozy. We were about halfway into the drive, lost in conversation when my phone rang. I glanced down, unknown number. Probably a scam call. I ignored it. Emily laughed, saying, "Who the hell calls people at midnight on Christmas Eve? These scammers are dedicated." I chuckled and let it go to voicemail, but then it rang again. Same unknown number. This time, Emily looked at me, her brows furrowed. "That's weird," she said. I shrugged it off, and then, 2 minutes later, my phone rang a third time. Frustrated, I grabbed it and swiped the screen aggressively, ready to tell whoever it was to stop calling. "Hello?" I snapped. At first, silence. Then, a faint static. I was about to hang up when a deep, unfamiliar male voice spoke. "Hello, Ryan." I nearly swerved off the road. I didn't recognize the voice, but whoever it was knew my name. Before I could respond, the man started reciting personal details about me. My full name, my address, my class schedule at Stanford, even what I was wearing at that moment. I felt paralyzed. No stranger should know these things. Emily was staring at me, wide-eyed. I tried to shake off the fear and act calm. "Who is this? What do you want?" I asked. There was a pause. Then the voice replied, "I'm not here for you. I'm here for Emily." I felt my blood run cold. Hearing my name was one thing, but hearing my girlfriend's? I gripped the wheel tighter. My brain was racing. "You've got the wrong number." I lied. I don't know an Emily. The man chuckled. She's sitting right next to you. Emily gasped. I slammed the brakes and pulled over. The road was completely empty, surrounded by nothing but trees and open fields. Before I could say anything, Emily lunged forward and hung up the phone. I screamed at her, "Why the hell did you do that? He was threatening us." She didn't answer. She just sat there, shaking, her eyes wide with fear. I tried calling the number back. Once, twice, 3 times. Each time call failed. Emily begged me to keep driving. I could hear the fear in her voice, so I did. But I kept asking myself, who was that man? How did he know us? The only people who knew about our midnight drive were our families, and they would never pull a sick joke like this. For the rest of the drive, we sat in silence. No music, no conversation, just the hum of the road and the occasional flicker of headlights from distant farmhouses. When we finally reached Emily's house, neither of us felt safe. It's been a month since that night. Neither of our families were behind the call. Emily swears she doesn't know anything about it. But deep down, I know he's going to call me again. It's just a matter of time.